Hello everybody, that's Norwegian Adam Clery from FourFourTwo here, and football is back. I mean, it never went away, obviously, because it never ever does, but in another very real sense, it's back. And the main event of this grand return was undoubtedly Chelsea versus Manchester City on Super Sunday, and while the result didn't exactly throw up any surprises, something did happen that caught my beady little eye. Or rather, someone. Now this, my dear pals, was the Manchester City side that started the first game of the season, and you will notice there is no Rodri, and that's normally terrible news for Manchester City because the 3 games in the league they lost that season were also the 3 games he didn't play. But thanks to the performance of young Rico Lewis, you barely noticed. And I think what you saw in this match was that he is such a unique footballer, and that Guardiola has sort of finally settled on a system in which he is a necessity. So first off, what is that system? Has Pep Guardiola reinvented the wheel again? And yes, sort of. We actually saw it from a couple of teams this weekend. Man United definitely used it. I'm told Arsenal did, but I haven't seen their game yet. Basically, this idea that in attacking scenarios, you build in a 3-1-6. Yeah, genuinely, like 6 attacking players, all more or less in a line, all pressing against the opposition's defense. It sounds stupid, it sounds ridiculous, but this appears to be the new hotness this season. And I will end up doing like a whole proper video on this 3-1-6 as the weeks roll on, but I'm just going to show you what Man City did specifically and why Lewis is so important to it, because he's kind of unique in this whole thing. Because technically, you'd sort of think of Lewis as an inverted fullback, right? That thing everybody was talking about last season, where one of your fullbacks moves into the middle of the pitch, you shuffle around into a back 3 like this, and then you get that box midfield. The other thing everyone was talking about last season. What the job of that fullback then is to play as another holding midfielder to give you a second pivot, so you get these nice little passing angles between the back 3, and more importantly, these 4 here then outnumber a midfield 3. That's what Zinchenko does at Arsenal. It's what Alexander-Arnold does at Liverpool. But of course, Man City, when they're at their absolute best, don't do that with an inverted fullback. They just bring John Stones out with the back line. He plays there, which is why City sometimes have 4 centre-backs across the line, because then you end up with 3 proper centre-backs here with him in there. But of course, as with any sort of tactical innovation in football, this has been popular for like 12, maybe 18 months now, so other sides have got ways to counteract it. And it's normally by defending in a 4-4-2 and then bringing your wingers sort of inside, so you've kind of got 4 in this area to match up this 4. Your 2 forwards then don't really press the back line, they don't leave the space in behind, they try and block off the passes into the pivots, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a accepted counter to it now. So what Guardiola and Ten Hag and Arteta, and I presume some more, have done this summer is gone, all right, okay, that 5 isn't as effective as it used to be. Okay, let's just do 6. So this, for example, is a classic Trent Alexander-Arnold inverted fullback heat map, right? I think it's from the Man United game last season. You'll see that he does a lot of his work down the touchline because he is still the right back. He has to defend there. There's going to be situations where he needs to be wide, holding a bit of width. But when he does get on the ball in the middle of the pitch, you'll see, if we just block this off, right, he has far more contributions in his own half than he does in the opposing half. He plays as a pivot. And obviously when Liverpool are dominating the game in phases, then he will push all the way up because he's really good to have in this sort of outside of the box area. But for the majority of the game, if he's getting on the ball in the middle, it's to help with the build-up. So he does it here. And that has pretty much been, ever since someone just made up the term, how we've seen inverted fullbacks work. Like, they're there for possession, they're there for ball control, they're there for build-up. But this, right, this is a classic Rico Lewis heat map. This is from the Aston Villa game last season where he played the full 90 minutes. He was absolutely excellent, and it might not look like it at all, but he was playing at right back. Like, City were stacked in that match. They had Alvarez, Foden, Grealish, Doku, Rodri, Bernardo Silva. They all started. He was not sitting in the midfield. He was starting from here. And just to use that same overlay as we used for Trent Alexander-Arnold, you will see occasionally he's holding the width. He is playing as a classic right back, but when you divide his contributions in the middle of the pitch between the halves, he does almost all of it in the attacking half, almost in the final third, occasionally in the bloody box. And that is because when Rico Lewis, the inverted fullback, inverts into the middle, he does not do it to go and sit as a pivot. he does it to go and play just as a number 8, practically a 10. And that, if I just sort of try and tidy this up a bit, is what was giving Man City this 3-1-6 shape. You had the back three coming across just as they would normally do, but they left 𝗘𝗫𝗧𝗥𝗔 on his own as the pivot, and then had this. Like, 𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗡 Silva went and joined Haaland pretty much up front. He was up against the centre-backs. Kevin De Bruyne could play in this left half space. All the width was coming from Doku and Savinho, and that left Rico Lewis in this channel here, which if we just put his heat map back on, you can see that was Christmas for him. And you saw this live and in living colour in Manchester City's first goal. Like, if we just wind the build-up back ever so slightly, and we just pause it here, that is 3 centre-backs at the back, Mateo Kovacic all on his own in the middle, and an attacking line of 6 players, including fullback Rico Lewis. And alright, okay, that's a still, it's a freeze frame. You could pause it at any point in the game and use it to try and make some sort of elaborate point, right? But there's 2 very telling things about this. First off, the most obvious one is that you could make the argument that Lewis and Kovacic are actually a 2 there. It's just that Lewis is slightly further forward. But if you advance the clip, you will see that his objective is he finds himself in on the edge of the box. That touch from Bernardo Silva that goes through to Haaland, we would have to ask him, admittedly, I don't know. But I think that is him trying to lay that back off for Lewis, not like bring it under control or play it through to big Erling. I think that's part of their attacking model, to get him in that position so we can get on the ball as a 10. But it's also Bernardo Silva that gives you the even bigger clue, because he's on the left-hand side of Erling Haaland. If De Bruyne and Silva were supposed to be the 2-8 either side of Haaland, because there's 2 more lads behind them, then they would be either side of Erling Haaland, but they're both on the same side. And that's obviously wrong and imbalanced and leaves a huge gap between Haaland in the centre and Savinho all the way out on the right. Like, somebody is clearly playing in this space between them. And that somebody, let's look at it again, is Rico Lewis. Now, that is the system, that is the theory, that is what Manchester City as a team are trying to do. But this video is not about Manchester City as a team, it's about why Rico Lewis is so good. And I'm going to make a very strange point here, right? Let's get rid of his heat map, and I'm going to show you the average positions for the Manchester City squad in that game. Now, given that he's playing in this inside channel as an 8 borderline 10, you're going to expect to see him somewhere up this end of the pitch. But if you look at it, you don't see that at all. In fact, you just see the 4-3-3. And I know you might be sitting there thinking, oh, well done, Adam. You've just completely undone all the points you've tried to make. This disproves the whole thing. And in a way, it does do that. But the point it actually makes is that Rico Lewis is so good at this role, he defies graphs and statistics. Like, you would think, to look at this, that Doku and Savinho played very narrow, quite close to Haaland. But actually what happened is they swapped wings early in the half. So they had loads of contributions on one side and loads of contributions on the other. So the average gets pulled into the middle. Bernardo Silva is actually on the right of Erling Haaland in this, because when they made the substitution and Foden came on, he did a lot of sort of switching with him, so he gets pulled way further over to the right. And thus, Rico Lewis looks like just a regular fullback who's trying to bomb up and down the wing, because he did so much defending, so much tracking of his runner, that it pulls his average position way further back into where a right back normally is. And that, as much as how Pep Guardiola was using him in this front line, was the most eye-catching thing about it. He defended unbelievably. Like, Christopher Nkunku is a hell of a footballer, and when he saw how far forward Rico Lewis was going, he was undoubtedly licking his lips at the possibilities that would leave on the pitch. When was the last time you saw a right back do that? And I'm sure you'll actually give me some examples in the comments, but I would bet it's probably never. So, yes, long story short, Pep Guardiola has reinvented Manchester City for the new season yet again. But more importantly, more interestingly, Rico Lewis has reinvented what it is to be an inverted fullback this season. He might even just reinvent what it is to be a fullback full stop, but just not get ahead of ourselves yet. So yes, there you go. That is the video. Are you a Manchester City fan or are you not? What did you make of that performance? Can they do the 5, Pete? which nobody is ever going to call it. All thoughts, all feelings, all comments, or verse, or poetry, anything you've got on your chest, please do get it off in the comments below. And I've only got 2 more weeks of banging on about this, I promise, but I will soon be attempting to do the Great North Run with no knees, bad heart, and just genuinely quite physically pathetic. But I am doing it to try and raise money for Mind, who are a mental health charity here in the UK. I'm an enormous fan of their work. I think the stuff they do is incredibly important, so it'd be great to raise a little bit of money for them. So if you have got like a spare $5 or anything kicking down the back of the sofa, the donations linked for the fundraiser, that will be in the comments and the description or somewhere below. Genuinely, I put this in like 3 videos and I've been knocked on my ass with how generous you guys have all been with the donations. Like, I thought I'd maybe get like a few quid from it, but it's been absolutely loads. So if you have donated, or you're going to, I cannot possibly say thank you enough. God. So Rice Krispies repeating on me. You get me on all the socials at Adam Clery, Clery. The season preview of 442, the best thing we do all year. It's like a proper magazine, then a big bumper extra preview thing. That is still in all good retailers now, so you should absolutely go and treat yourself to that if you spot it. The socials for 442, they're in the corner of the video as well. And until next time, Rico Lewis, man. He's not going to my FPL team. I'm not that convinced yet, but what a player. What a player. Goodbye.